When the Accra sun hits like judgment, a camera blinks, and a mother's dignity is traded for laughs. Tied to a backyard rail with bruised wrists, Mama Ijeoma whispers a prayer, while BC's phone hunts for views and Tunde looks away afraid of the past clinging to his suit. But the internet's roar is a restless god. In the pixels, someone spots a welt, another remembers a wedding ring sold for school fees, and a quiet neighbor pockets a piece of truth the house forgot. Tonight a secret will step out of the shadows, a rope that wasn't an accident, a ledger of debts, a tin box with a future inside, and a son who must choose between image and blood. Before dawn, a courtroom will fill, a gavel will fall, and the only path home will pass through a single kneeling heart. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from and your local time. Drop it in the comments, then subscribe to African Stories so you never miss a tale where dignity fights back. The morning heat of Accra pressed down on every wall like punishment. Behind the grand white house of the Adigun family, flies buzzed over a cracked water drum, and the smell of leftover stew lingered. There, under a mango tree whose branches cast a trembling shadow, an old woman sat tied to a wooden rail. Her wrists were swollen, the rope cutting deep into her paper-thin skin. Her name was Mama Ijeoma, and she had once believed love could outlast poverty. In front of her, BC stood in high heels, holding up her phone like a weapon. "Say it again, Mama. Tell the camera why you're begging for medicine money." Her voice was sugar and poison. Mama Ijeoma's lips quivered. "My chest burns, child. Just one tablet of amoxicillin." BC laughed, tapping the screen to focus. "Perfect lighting. The world must see how dramatic my mother-in-law is." Inside the open kitchen window, Tunde leaned against the marble counter, jaw clenched. He wore a crisp white shirt and a watch that gleamed under the noon Sunday. "BC, enough," he said flatly. "You're embarrassing us." BC turned, smirking. "Oh, embarrassing us, or exposing your family's village habits." Tunde's eyes flickered toward his mother. "Mama, you could have told me privately, not come out here crying before the neighbors." The words sliced through Mama Ijeoma's chest. "Tunde, I did not mean to shame you. My body just—" "Enough," he snapped, voice sharp as glass. The old woman bit her lip until it bled, whispering a prayer under her breath. Around them, the sun turned merciless, bleaching the color out of everything except the bruises on her wrists. From across the fence, Amara, a young neighbor with kind eyes and a basket of laundry, froze mid-step. She had seen odd things before, whispers, harsh words, but never this. Her hand trembled over her phone, instinct telling her to record, conscience telling her to hide. She quietly aimed the lens through a gap in the fence. "Smile, Mama," BZ said, still recording. "Maybe this one will get 1 million views." The phone camera clicked. For a brief second, the reflection caught Tunde's face, tight, ashamed, but silent. Silence, the cruelest agreement. When the recording stopped, BC strutted back into the house, humming to herself. "I'll post it with the caption, 'Cure for mother-in-law drama coming soon.'" Mama Ijeoma stayed still, her breath shallow. The rope around her wrists felt like a curse she had earned for loving too deeply. Minutes later, Tunde walked out, untied the rope without looking at her. "Please, Mama, stop causing scenes. You know how social media is." "I only asked for medicine," she whispered. He sighed already, walking away. "You're making it worse." And just like that, the woman who once carried him on her back was left to cradle her own pain. By evening, the sky had turned copper, and the neighborhood loudspeakers were calling for prayer. Mama Ijeoma sat alone on a broken stool, tracing the scar on her wrist. Every mark on her body told a story no one wanted to hear. Inside, BC was applying lipstick, her laughter echoing through the glass walls. "You know what's funny, Tunde? People think your mother is a saint. Maybe this video will show the truth. She's a manipulator, always begging." Tunde rubbed his temples. "Delete it, BC. You're going too far. Too far, or just far enough to get attention." She tilted her head. "You think your boss, Miss Adeyemi, will respect you if she knows your background? Please, I'm protecting our image." He didn't reply. In that silence, his pride became his prison. When the house finally went quiet, Mama Ijeoma dragged herself to the kitchen. She filled a cup with water, took a slow sip, and stared at her reflection in the stainless pot. Her hair, once black and full, now silvered like dust. Her eyes, once sharp, now clouded by disappointment. She remembered a different time, Okairimo, her home village, where mornings smelled of charcoal smoke and roasted maize. She saw herself younger, holding little Tunde's hand as they walked to the school gate. Her palms were blistered from frying akara, yet she never complained. Back then, Tunde would turn and wave, shouting, "Mama, I'll make you proud." Those words used to feed her better than food. Now, standing under a city roof built by loans and pride, She could barely recognize the boy she raised. At dawn, Amara returned. She saw Mama sweeping the yard slowly, each movement painful but stubborn. "Auntie, are you okay?" Mama smiled weakly. "When you live long enough, child pain becomes a roommate." Amara hesitated. "I saw what happened yesterday." "Forget it," Mama whispered. "Young people lose their way sometimes, but God is patient." Amara wanted to say more but stopped when BC's voice echoed from the balcony. "Amara, mind your business," Mama raised a hand gently. "Go, my dear. Don't get in trouble." As Amara walked away, she noticed the rope still lying by the mango tree. She picked it up, folded it quietly into her laundry basket, and thought, "Some ropes tie bodies, others tie destinies." That night, thunder rolled over Accra. Inside the Adigan house, BC's phone lit up a flood of notifications. She had posted the clip. Views exploded: 10,000, 100,000, 500,000. Laughter emojis danced across the screen. Tunde scrolled through the comments, face pale. "That old woman is a burden. Teach her manners." Classic African mother-in-law drama. He swallowed hard. "BC, take it down. Now." She looked up lazily. "Why, people love it. This is cruelty." "This is content," she corrected. Their argument rose above the storm outside. In the kitchen, Mama sat on the floor, coughing blood into a cloth, her ears ringing with their voices. She held the photo of little Tunde in her hand, tracing his smiling face. "God," she murmured, "forgive him. He just forgot the soil that grew him." The next morning, the sky cleared, fresh and cruelly beautiful. Neighbors were whispering. The market women had already seen the viral clip. Amara came by again with a bowl of hot porridge. "Annie, please eat." Mama smiled faintly. "Thank you, child. You remind me of the daughter I never had." When Amara left, Mama's hands trembled as she lifted the spoon. The porridge spilled, and she laughed softly. "Even my hands betray me now." Upstairs, Tunde stared at his phone. A message from Miss Adeyemi had arrived. "Tunde is the woman in that video, your mother. Until this matter is clarified, your employment is suspended." The world tilted. He rushed downstairs, found Mama folding her wrapper. "Mama, what have you done? My job, my reputation." She looked up calmly. "Your reputation? Son, what reputation can stand if it rests on shame?" He froze. I didn't mean I know," she said, voice soft. "You were born kind. The city just made you forget." Her cough returned deep and rattling. He reached out instinctively, then hesitated, the reflex of pride stronger than love. That hesitation, so small, so cruel, would soon haunt him forever. Outside, the wind picked up again, blowing dust through the courtyard. The mango leaves whispered like witnesses. In the far corner of the yard, Amara's laundry basket still held a folded rope, silent evidence of a story not yet told. And somewhere in the digital storm of likes and laughter, a nation was beginning to take notice of one mother's humiliation. Long before that cruel video ever touched the internet, the story of Mama Ijeoma had begun in a very different place. A village where kindness was currency and hardship, a familiar visitor. The place was called Oki Iramo, a small settlement near the river Oyun, where red earth painted the feet of every child and even the wind smelled of palm oil and faith. In those early years, she was simply Ijeoma, the Akara seller. Every morning before dawn, she lit her charcoal stove and whispered, "God, make today's beans stretch farther than yesterday's." She ground the soaked beans, stirred them into thick batter, and dropped golden balls into sizzling oil. As they bubbled, she hummed old Yoruba lullabies that her own mother once sang. Her husband Chike had died during a rainy season when lightning split the roof and fever claimed his body before sunrise. On that night, Ijeoma became both father and mother. She buried her tears beneath calloused palms and turned her grief into fuel. Her son Tunde was all she had left of him, a small boy with big eyes and a stubborn heart. He would chase goats in the dusty street, laugh with the neighbors' kids, then run back to the stall shouting, "Mama, I'll be the richest man in Oke Remo." And Mama Ijeoma would laugh, wiping flour on his cheek. "Riches are nothing without goodness, my son. Promise me you'll be a good man before a successful one." Tunde always nodded. He meant it then. Those were years of hunger, yes, but also of warmth. The kerosene lamp in their one-room hut glowed like a star fallen to earth. Every night, Tunde studied his school books while his mother mended torn uniforms by the dim light. She had sold nearly everything to keep him in school, her bangles, her wrappers, and eventually the small gold ring Chike had placed on her finger the day they married. When the principal once demanded tuition she didn't have, she smiled politely, then spent the night patching the roof so the rain wouldn't leak onto her son's books. A mother's body can rest, she whispered to herself, but her hope must not. The villagers often shook their heads. This woman will work herself into the grave. Mama only smiled. If my grave builds his future, let the earth welcome me early. Years moved like waves, one hardship after another, but Tunde grew clever and quick. When he received his admission letter to the University of Port Harcourt, Mama Ijeoma could hardly read it. Her hands shook too much. She pressed the paper to her chest, tears streaming down her face. So it's true, my boy will wear a graduation gown one day. That night, as they packed his single bag, she gave him a small tin box. It rattled softly with coins. It's not much, but it's every naira I saved. Use it when life forgets your name. Tunde hugged her, promising to call every Sunday. When I graduate, I'll build you a new house, Mama, one with a tiled floor and no leaks. Just build it with love, she said. The floor doesn't matter. At the bus park the next morning, the air smelled of diesel and dreams. Mama held her wrapper tightly, watching her son climb aboard. Tunde, she called, don't let the city teach you pride. He smiled from the window. Never, Mama. The bus roared to life, and with it, her heart broke a little. She stood there long after the dust settled, whispering blessings to the empty road. University life changed Tunde faster than Mama could have imagined. Port Harcourt was a city of speed, neon lights, smart suits, and men who laughed loudly about money. At first, he wrote letters full of gratitude and small news. Mama, I cooked akara for my roommates today. It didn't taste as good as yours. But later the letters came shorter, rarer, until they stopped. Mama still waited by the post office every market day. Sometimes she'd ask the clerk. Maybe the mail truck was delayed. The clerk would shrug. Madam, check next week. She would smile, hiding her disappointment, and walk home slowly, stopping at the church to light a candle for her son's protection. Back in Port Harcourt, Tunde had learned a new language, the language of ambition. He met Bisi at a company seminar, a woman with perfume that spoke louder than her words. Her laughter shimmered, her nails glinted gold, and her eyes scanned people like price tags. You carry yourself like a man of influence, she told him. He laughed, embarrassed. Me, I'm just a small project engineer. Don't be modest, she said. The city rewards men who act like they belong. That sentence hooked him. For the first time, he felt ashamed of his village accent, of the mother who still called him, my little Sunday. He began to polish his tongue, his shoes, his image. He traded humility for hunger, convinced it was progress. When he finally brought Bisi home to Oke after graduation, the entire village celebrated. Mama cooked from dawn, ofe, onugbu, akamu, and akara just the way Tunde loved. She borrowed chairs from neighbors, set the old wooden table, and waited with trembling joy. But when Bisi entered the house, she wrinkled her nose. This is where you grew up. Mama's smile faltered. Yes, my dear. Humble, but full of blessings. Bisi's gaze swept the mud walls and oil lamp. Tunde, you're a grown man living like a refugee. We must fix this embarrassment. Tunde laughed nervously. She's just joking, Mama. But Bisi wasn't. During dinner, she picked at the food, then pushed her bowl away. I'm not used to village meals, too greasy. Mama's hands trembled as she reached for the pot. Maybe a little more salt will help. No need, Bisi said coolly. Your son and I will eat in town next time. The rest of the evening passed under heavy silence. When night came, Mama sat outside looking up at the moon, the same moon she once prayed under when Tunde was born. She whispered, Have I raised a stranger? The next morning, as Tunde packed, Mama followed him to the door. Son, she said softly, I know cities can change people. Just don't let them steal your heart. He avoided her eyes. Mama, you wouldn't understand. Lagos Saria cries competitive. Appearances matter. Appearances feed pride, not the soul, she replied. He hugged her briefly, the kind of hug that ends before it begins. When the car started, dust swirled around her bare feet. She waved until the taillights disappeared. Her fingers felt cold. Go, my son, she murmured. If your destiny is far, may God walk beside you. But as the silence of the village closed in, she pressed a hand to her chest and added, And may he remind you where you came from. That was the last time Okiaremo saw Tunde for many years. In the city, he climbed fast, better suits, bigger office, louder parties. Each promotion was a brick in the wall separating him from his past. Whenever Mama called, he would answer quickly, politely, and end the call even quicker. Mama, I'm busy became his favorite phrase. Still, every night in that small village house, Mama Ijeoma would light a kerosene lamp and whisper to the empty room, He's alive, that is enough. But deep inside, a seed of sorrow took root, one that would one day bloom into heartbreak the whole world would watch. Accra glittered at night like a necklace of moving stars. The city hummed with ambition, car horns, rooftop parties, perfume and pride. Somewhere amid that glow lived Tunde Adigun, no longer the barefoot boy from Okeyarimo, but a man who had learned to smile with strangers and hide his roots behind polished shoes. He managed a construction project for Eco Build Group, and every morning he adjusted his tie as if it could tighten his place among the powerful. At the company headquarters, people called him Mr. Tunde now, and he liked the sound of it. It made him forget that once he had to borrow a pen just to fill out an exam form. That was where BC entered his life, in the middle of a project inspection under the blazing Accra Sunday. She arrived late heels, clicking her red lipstick, catching light like a dare. "So you're the man everyone keeps talking about," she said, offering a hand heavy with gold rings. Tunde straightened, flustered. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am." "Ma'am," she laughed, a sharp sound that drew every eye. "Call me BC. I prefer first names. They sound powerful." That first meeting turned into coffee, then dinner, then nights of whispered dreams about houses by the sea, and a life where no one ever mentioned villages or Akara smoke. BC knew how to speak the city's language, fast, loud, confident. Her perfume lingered in rooms like a promise of something better. For Tunde, who had spent years trying to erase the scent of poverty, she smelled like victory. But victory has a price. Weeks turned into months, and BC moved into his apartment. Her taste replaced his velvet curtains, silver utensils, mirrors that reached the ceiling. "We can't live like average people," she said, swiping through design photos. "We need to look like success." Tunde hesitated. "We're saving for the wedding." "Relax," she smiled. "Credit exists for a reason." Soon his salary vanished beneath luxury. Yet when she laughed and called him my city king, he forgot every warning his mother once gave about pride wearing fine clothes. Then one morning an envelope arrived. It was from Mama Ijeoma, written in her careful handwriting. "My son, I hope you are eating well. The nights are cold here, but my heart is warm thinking of you. I pray every morning that you remember kindness wherever life takes you." Tunde read the letter quickly, then tucked it in a drawer where it gathered dust between receipts for imported wine. When he finally decided to bring BC to meet his mother, it wasn't out of love, it was obligation. "Let's go home for the weekend," he said, trying to sound casual. BC frowned. "Home? You mean the village?" "Yes, Mama has been asking to meet you." She rolled her eyes. "All right, but don't expect me to eat whatever strange food she makes." The road to Okeyarimo was long, winding through farmlands and memory. Each mile stripped away a layer of his city armor until he felt like the boy who once chased goats barefoot. When they arrived, Mama Ijeoma had already been waiting since dawn. She had swept the compound twice, cooked moi and pap, and wrapped herself in her cleanest Ankara wrapper. When she saw them step out of the car, her eyes filled with tears. "Tunde," she cried, arms wide. "You're home." He hugged her lightly, worried about dust on his shirt. "Mama, this is BC." BC nodded without smiling. "Good afternoon." Mama clasped her hands. "You are welcome, my daughter. I made Akara, your husband, to be's favorite." BC sniffed. "Oh, thank you. I'm not used to fried food." They sat around the old wooden table. Mama served steaming bowls, the same meal that had kept Tunde alive through childhood. But BC barely touched her spoon. She whispered, "This is too heavy. My stomach isn't used to such oil." Tunde forced a laugh. "She's used to continental dishes, Mama." Mama's smile faltered, but she said nothing. The silence after that meal was heavier than the heat. Later, while Tunde washed his hands outside, Mama approached him quietly. "My son, she's beautiful. But does she have warmth?" He frowned. "Mama, don't start. She's modern, that's all." "Modern doesn't mean heartless," Mama replied gently. "Remember, wealth can build walls, not homes." Tunde turned away. "You wouldn't understand the world I live in now." Her eyes filled with worry. "Maybe not, but the world still needs heart." The next morning before dawn, Mama rose to prepare their breakfast: corn porridge and fried plantain. She hummed her favorite Igbo hymn, the one Sheik used to whistle before harvest. When she knocked on the door to call them to eat, BC groaned loudly. "Tunde, tell your mother it's too early." "Who eats at 6 a.m.? Mama smiled softly. "Ah, city people, their stomachs wake late." She set the tray outside the door and went to the small garden to pluck scent leaves. By the time they came out, the food had gone cold. BC pushed it aside, muttering, "Even presentation matters." Mama looked down, hiding her hurt. "Forgive me, daughter. My plates are old." Tunde sighed impatiently. "Mama, don't mind her. She's just tired." But the rest of the day felt like a funeral of love. When it was time to leave, Mama gave BC a woven basket. "Take this for your new home," she said. Inside were dried pepper palm oil and a small wooden carving of a woman carrying water. "It's a blessing," she explained. "For patience in marriage." BC glanced at it briefly, then left it on the table. As the car engine started, Mama placed a trembling hand on Tunde's arm. "Son, I will not hold you back. Go and build your dreams. Just remember what you promised to be a good man before a successful one." He smiled tightly. "Of course, Mama. I'll send money soon." But she could see the distance already written in his eyes. She stepped back as the car drove off, dust rising like a curtain between them. She whispered, "Go, my child. The city will teach you what I could not." Back in Accra, the contrast hit like thunder. The city swallowed Tunde whole. His old memories blurred under neon lights and endless deadlines. At first he called Mama weekly, then monthly, then only on her birthday. BC made faces each time the old woman's name appeared on his phone. "Can't she learn to live without us?" she said once. "She's lonely," Tunde murmured. "She's manipulative," BC replied, scrolling through her tablet. "All mothers-in-law are." Tunde said nothing. Meanwhile, Mama continued her life quietly. She sold roasted corn near the village junction, her back bent, her eyes bright, whenever travelers from Accra passed by. She always asked, "Do you know my son, engineer Tunde Adigun? He works in the city." Sometimes people nodded vaguely, sometimes not, but her smile never dimmed. Each night she would light her lamp and whisper into the dark, "He must be eating well. He must be safe." Then one day, after 2 silent years, she decided to go to him. She sold her last goat, packed her wrapper, and carried the small cloth bag containing the tin box, her savings, and Tunde's childhood photo. The journey to Accra was long and bumpy. At every stop, she imagined his face lighting up when he saw her. He will be surprised, she thought, but happy. She arrived at his gate under the afternoon Sunday. The house stood tall, glass and steel, surrounded by trimmed hedges, a fortress of success. When the maid answered, Mama smiled nervously. "Tell my son his mother has come." The maid frowned. "Madam is inside. Wait." Moments later, BC appeared in a silk robe, eyes narrowing. "You? How did you find this place? I came to help," Mama said softly. "I can cook, clean, anything. I just wanted to be near my child." BC's laugh was ice. "We don't need help, especially from the past." Then Tunde appeared behind her. For a brief second, joy flashed across Mama's face. "My son?" But his arms stayed folded. "Mama, why didn't you call first? I wanted to surprise you," she said. He sighed, embarrassed. "You shouldn't have come. This house isn't built for village living." Her smile trembled. "I can stay anywhere, even the kitchen floor, just to be close." BC smirked. "Perfect. There's space by the pantry." And so Mama Ijeoma moved into the corner of her son's mansion, not as a guest, but as a shadow. The pantry smelled of detergent and loneliness. In one corner of that shining Accra mansion, Mama Ijeoma spread a thin mat beside a stack of cleaning buckets. It wasn't much, barely enough space to stretch her legs, but she whispered, "At least I can hear my son breathe under the same roof." To her, that was still a blessing. At first, she tried to make herself invisible. Each morning before sunrise, she would sweep the hallways, dust the shelves, and boil ginger tea just like she used to back home. She would leave the cup near the living room where Tunde sat scrolling through his phone before work. Sometimes he noticed. Most days he didn't. Whenever BC walked by, her perfume filled the air before her voice did. "Mama, this house has housekeepers. You don't have to touch anything." "I'm only trying to help," Mama said softly. BC's smile was thin. "Help. If the neighbors see you scrubbing floors, they'll think I mistreat you. Just sit quietly." And so Mama sat quietly. But silence has a way of growing heavy. She missed the laughter of her market friends, the smell of wood smoke, the voices of people who spoke kindly. Here, every sound was polished and distant, the tick of the wall clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the high heels echoing on the marble floor. When she coughed, BC would frown. "Mama, must you make that sound? It's unpleasant during breakfast." Mama bowed her head. "I will try, my daughter." She began covering her mouth with a towel, coughing into it at night to muffle the noise. The towel turned spotted with red, but she washed it in secret, afraid Tunde would worry or worse, scold her for it. One Sunday morning, BC hosted a women's brunch for her influencer friends. The table glittered with imported dishes and mimosas. Mama watched from the pantry door as they laughed about handbags and hashtags. When she stepped out quietly to collect the empty plates, one of the guests gasped. "Who's that old woman?" BC froze. Oh, our housemaid, Mama blinked. Housemaid. The word sank like a stone in her heart. She forced a polite smile and took the plates. But as she turned, her trembling hands dropped one and it shattered on the floor. The guest giggled. Mama, look what you've done, BC hissed, her voice syrup on the surface but venom beneath. I'm sorry, daughter. My hand slipped. Go inside before you embarrass me further. Tunde, seated at the far end of the table, didn't even look up from his tablet. Mama gathered the broken pieces, carefully hiding the small cut on her palm. A mother bleeds quietly, she thought. That's how love survives. As weeks passed, her cough worsened. She could barely stand without dizziness, but she kept her pain secret. Every night she opened the tin box she had carried from Okiaremo. Inside lay a few coins, a folded photograph of Tunde at age 8, and a handwritten verse from Proverbs, "Do not despise your mother when she is old." She traced the words with a trembling finger and whispered, "Maybe he just forgot to read this part." Sometimes while washing dishes late at night, she'd hear BC and Tunde arguing upstairs. Money, appearances, parties. It was always about things that disappeared as soon as the lights went out. One night when their voices rose again, she heard BC shout, "Your mother is the reason people don't respect us. She calls too often. She looks poor. I can't live like this." There was silence. Then Tunde's weary voice, "I'll talk to her." The next morning he came to the kitchen. Mama looked up hopeful. "Tunde, I made your favorite fried yam with pepper sauce." He didn't smile. "Mama, maybe you shouldn't call me so much. BC feels it's too much." Her hands froze on the ladle. "Too much love," he sighed, frustrated. "You wouldn't understand. The city is different." She nodded slowly. "Yes, I see that now." When he left, the food went cold on the stove. Rain season came early that year. The nights were long and damp, and Mama's lungs grew weaker. She often woke gasping, pressing a cloth to her chest to stifle the sound. But every time she thought of returning to the village, her heart argued back, "If I leave, who will pray over my son? Who will remind him what kindness looks like?" So she stayed. One afternoon, when she could bear the pain no longer, she knocked timidly on their bedroom door. "Who is it?" BC's voice snapped from inside. "It's me, Mama. The door opened halfway. BC's makeup gleamed even in the dim hallway light. "What do you want now? I'm sorry to disturb you, child." "My chest, it hurts." "I just need a little money for medicine," BC scoffed. "You think Accra pharmacies are cheap? We're not a charity. You should have stayed in your village where herbs are free." Tunde appeared behind her, sleepy and irritated. "Mama, it's late. I'll buy medicine tomorrow." "But my breath." "Tomorrow," he repeated, shutting the door. Mama stood there, staring at the wood grain until her vision blurred. She whispered, "He's tired. I'll wait." That night, she clutched her chest as another coughing fit racked her body. Each breath felt like shards of glass slicing through her lungs. She bit her sleeve to keep from making noise. The next day, the sun burned cruelly bright. Mama's body trembled as she tried to clean the kitchen. She bent to scrub the oily floor and suddenly lost balance, falling hard against the tiles. Pain exploded up her spine. BC's scream pierced the silence, but not out of concern. "Tunde, your mother is pretending again." Tunde rushed in frustration, more than fear in his eyes. "Mama, get up! Stop this drama!" Mama tried, but her limbs refused to obey. I just need one pill," she gasped. BC pulled out her phone, recording with a smirk. "Everyone online should see what we deal with. Mother-in-law from hell." Tunde hesitated. "BC, stop. Why? She loves attention. Let's give it to her." Mama's breath came in shallow bursts. "Child, please." "No pictures." BC stepped closer, camera steady. "Say it again, Mama. Beg properly for your medicine." The tears that spilled from Mama's eyes weren't just from pain, they were from disbelief. This was her family now, a screen, a son who looked away, a world that found cruelty entertaining. She tried to rise once more, but her wrist slipped against the tiles. The thud echoed through the hall. "Tunde," she whispered, voice faint. "When did loving you become shameful?" But he couldn't answer. His silence said enough. That night, while they laughed upstairs at a movie, Mama lay on her mat, staring at the ceiling. Her coughs came softer now, her strength fading. Still, she smiled faintly and murmured, "If he is happy, it is enough." Outside, thunder cracked open the sky as if heaven itself couldn't bear the sight. Somewhere across the wall, Amara from next door looked up from her window. She had heard the noise, seen the shadows. She knew something was deeply wrong. She reached for her phone, whispering, "This time, the world will see." And in the dark of that Accra night, a single red recording light blinked through the rain, ready to capture the truth. The next morning, the storm had washed Accra clean, but inside, Tunde's house filth still lived hidden beneath marble tiles and expensive curtains. The events of the previous night hung heavy in the air like incense after a funeral. Mama Ijeoma woke on her thin mat, her joints screaming, her chest raw from coughing. Light seeped through the window bars, a cruel reminder that even the sun could shine on injustice. She heard laughter upstairs. BC's voice. That sharp, careless melody that turned human pain into content. The smell of perfume and coffee drifted down the hallway, mixing with the faint metallic scent of blood from Mama's cracked lips. Slowly, she pushed herself up, whispering to her heart to stay steady. Endure, Ijeoma. Mothers don't break. They bend. Her body obeyed, though barely. She tidied the kitchen, hiding all evidence of her fall, the broken plate, the blood-stained cloth. Pride was all she had left. Upstairs, BC stood in front of her ring light, fixing her hair. On her phone screen, a caption glowed, "Cure for the mother-in-law disease." She added a laughing emoji, adjusted the color filter, and tapped upload. Within minutes, notifications exploded. 1,000,000 views. 1,2,0,0,000 views. 5,000,000 views. The clip showed Mama on the floor, trembling, her voice faint. Just one pill, BC's laughter followed like a slap. The comments poured in drama, Queen Mother-in-law, she should stop begging. Good lesson for old people who don't mind their business. Each word was a dagger. And BC smiled as the numbers climbed. Finally, she said, "I'm trending." Tunde came home from work that evening, tie-loosened face, tired. "What's going on?" he asked when he saw BC grinning at her screen. "Our video blew up," she squealed. "Our what? Don't be dramatic. It's harmless fun." He reached for the phone, but she pulled it back. "Relax, City King. It's not about you. It's about her. Her, his mother." Tunde's stomach turned. "You filmed her. Everyone films everything now. It's the digital age." He rubbed his forehead, dread rising. "Take it down." BC rolled her eyes. "Why? It's getting millions of views. People love it. You're just worried about your reputation." I said, "Take it down. Make me." They glared at each other, the silence between them louder than thunder. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Miss Adeyemi, his boss, Mr. Tunde. "Please confirm, is the woman in this viral video your mother? If so, report to HR immediately. The company does not tolerate elder abuse." His throat went dry. Oh God. Downstairs, Mama was too weak to eat. The sound of their argument drifted faintly through the walls, but she could no longer care who was right. She just wanted quiet. She touched the small tin box again, whispering, "Maybe I will go back home soon. The city doesn't know my language." Her cough returned deeper this time, and blood spotted her wrapper. She reached for water but found the cup empty. Her hands shook so badly she nearly spilled what was left. The door opened suddenly. Tunde stormed in, eyes blazing. "Mama, do you understand what you've done?" She looked up startled. "What have I done?" "Because of that video, because of all this nonsense, my job is on the line. The entire company thinks I abused you." Her mouth opened but no sound came. You lost work because of me," he paced. "Because of your drama, you should have never come here." The words hit harder than the fall last night. She swallowed, trying to steady her voice. "Tunde, I only came to love you, not to harm you." He turned away. "Love doesn't fix this." Her tears slid silently down her cheeks. "Maybe not, but shame doesn't fix your soul either." That evening, the internet's laughter grew louder. Memes, GIFs, mocking edits of Mama crying. But among the cruelty, something else began to stir tiny sparks of conscience. A user named @NijaJustice posted a comment under the video, paused the jokes. "Look at her wrists. That's bruising, not acting." Another wrote, "Do you people remember Yoruba culture? A mother is a goddess of the home. Whoever mocks her mocks their own blood." Then a comment that changed everything. "I know this woman. She sold her wedding ring so her son, Tunde Adigun, could go to school. And this is how they repay her." The internet turned. Hashtags flooded in number, "Justice for Mama Ijeoma," number, "Respect your elders," number, "Shame on Tunde." News blogs picked it up. TikTok remixes appeared. By sunset, the clip had over 3 million views, and now half the city was furious. In the living room, BC refreshed her feed and froze. "Wait, what's happening? Why are people attacking us?" Tunde snatched the phone. The screen was filled with angry comments, his name trending for all the wrong reasons. "Oh no," he whispered. Another message buzzed in from his company. "You're suspended indefinitely pending investigation." He dropped onto the sofa numb. BC's voice trembled. This can't be happening. They can't cancel us. He looked up at her bitterness, twisting his mouth. You wanted attention. You got it. She glared back. You were the one ashamed of her. You let me film. He slammed his fist against the table. Stop twisting it. I stayed silent, and that silence made me worse than you. From the corner of the kitchen, a small gasp escaped. Mama stood there, hand pressed to her chest. Her legs wobbled, but she steadied herself. Don't fight, she whispered. It's already enough pain for one house. Her words soft as they were sliced through the chaos. Tunde turned to her, guilt crashing down like rain. Mama! But before he could finish, she swayed and collapsed. The next moments blurred into panic. Tunde BC screamed. He dropped to his knees, lifting his mother's frail body. Her breath was shallow, her pulse faint. Mama, can you hear me? Her lips moved. Don't be angry, my son. I forgive you. Please stop talking. We're going to the hospital. He carried her out into the storm-damp driveway, waving frantically for a taxi. BC followed, trembling, not from guilt yet, but from fear of what this would mean for her image. At Street, Nicholas Annex Hospital, the fluorescent lights felt colder than ice. Doctors rushed her onto a stretcher, their voices overlapping. Severe respiratory failure, oxygen saturation dropping. Tunde stumbled after them, heart pounding. An older nurse caught his arm. Sir, how long has she been coughing blood? I don't know. She shook her head. Too long. She's been hiding it. He sat on the hallway floor, his head in his hands as guilt flooded him like poison. Every moment replayed every call. He ignored every sigh, every cruel silence. BC sat a few seats away, scrolling through her phone with shaking fingers. The notifications hadn't stopped. Now there were journalists asking for statements, activists demanding justice. The nurse returned. She's stable for now, but it's serious. Prepare for long treatment. Tunde stood, wiping his eyes. Whatever it costs. Sell everything, my car, my watch, just save her. The nurse nodded. We'll do our best. As she left, Tunde stared through the window at his mother lying beneath the hospital, lights her chest rising and falling with fragile rhythm. He whispered to himself, I became the man she prayed I'd never be. Outside cameras were already flashing. Reporters wanted a story, but inside that sterile room, a son wanted forgiveness more than fame. And somewhere in the chaos of hashtags and headlines, Amara, the neighbor who had seen everything uploaded, a quiet, unedited clip from her phone, one that showed the truth behind the viral lie, the rope, the bruises, the begging. The internet's laughter stopped. The world began to listen. The sterile corridor of Street Nicholas Annex Hospital smelled of antiseptic and sorrow. The beeping of machines echoed down the hall like a fragile heartbeat that refused to give up. Tunde sat slumped in a plastic chair, his suit crumpled, his face pale from sleeplessness. His phone lay silent beside him, no more calls from clients, no more messages from the company. Overnight, he had gone from Mr. Tunde Adigun project manager to a trending symbol of shame. Behind the glass, Mama Ijeoma lay motionless under the white sheets, her face turned toward the window as if still searching for light. A thin tube ran across her nose, pumping life in and out like a borrowed rhythm. Every few seconds, the monitor beeped a sound that stabbed Tunde's chest with guilt. He whispered to himself, I used to run to her when I was sick. Now she's the one dying and I can't even run fast enough to save her. A hand touched his shoulder. He looked up to see Miss Adeyemi, his boss, the woman who had suspended him. She wasn't in her usual tailored suit today. Instead, she wore a simple blouse and glasses, her expression softer than he'd ever seen. Tunde, she said quietly, I came because I needed to see the truth myself. The internet can lie, but a mother's eyes don't. He swallowed hard. I never hit her. I swear I didn't. But I let others hurt her. I let silence do the damage. Miss Adeyemi nodded slowly. Sometimes silence is the loudest cruelty. She hesitated, then added, When I was 10, my parents died. I grew up alone. I used to envy people who still had a mother to scold them, to care for them. You still have yours, Tunde. Don't waste that chance. Her words sank into him like medicine he hadn't known he needed. If she wakes up, he said, I'll never let her out of my sight again. Miss Adeyemi looked through the glass. Then start by making sure she has a home to return to, a real one, not a house of pride. In the next room, BC paced restlessly. Her phone was still buzzing with notifications, but this time, they weren't the kind she liked. Her own followers had turned against her. You filmed your sick mother-in-law for clout. Heartless witch, lock her up. Her sponsorship deals were collapsing. Even Chief Gambo, the wealthy businessman who had financed her influencer lifestyle, had sent a cold message. Don't call me, police are investigating. BC clenched her phone until her nails dug into her palm. "This can't be happening," she muttered. "They loved me yesterday. They hate me today. It's not fair." But she knew the truth. Fame built on humiliation always crumbled faster than it rose. When she tried to enter the ward, Tunde stopped her. "What do you want?" she scoffed. "She's still my mother-in-law," he shook his head. "You lost that right when you used her pain as entertainment. You think you're better," she snapped. "You stood there doing nothing while I filmed." He froze. The words hit like stones because they were true. "I'm done with this," she said, finally turning to leave. "I'll call my lawyer." "Do that," he replied, his voice steady but cold. "But don't come back." BC hesitated at the doorway, then walked away, her heels clicking like closing chapters. Hours later, Amara arrived at the hospital carrying a folder. Her face was calm, but her eyes carried fire. "Tunde," she said, "I think you'll need this." He opened the folder and found several printed screenshots, the original footage BC had posted, and another file from Amara's CCTV camera, clearly showing the earlier scene, BC tying Mama's wrists, forcing her to kneel while laughing. "I didn't mean to spy," Amara said. "But I had cameras for my shop next door. I saw everything." Tunde's throat tightened. "You're saving her life again." "Thank you." "It's not me saving her," Amara replied softly. "It's truth. Truth has its own timing." She handed him a USB drive. "Take this to the police before BC tries to twist the story." Later that night, Tunde sat beside his mother's bed holding her fragile hand. Her skin was cool, her veins faint blue rivers beneath parchment. "Mama," he whispered, "I've lost everything, my job, my name, my peace. But if you wake up, I'll still have a reason to live." For the first time in days, her eyelids fluttered. She tried to speak, but only a weak rasp came out. "Don't talk," he said quickly. "Rest." But she managed to murmur. "Did you eat?" He choked on a sob. "You're the one fighting for life, and you still worry about food," she smiled faintly. "A mother's heart never changes, even when her body does." He bent forward, tears soaking her blanket. "Mama, I was blind. I thought success was measured in what I could buy. But I see now it's measured by who still prays for you when you fall." Her fingers squeezed his weakly. "Then you have already begun to rise again." The machines beeped steadily. For the first time in weeks, hope entered the room. Outside, the media storm grew louder. News outlets broadcast headlines, "Viral cruelty sparks national outrage." "Influencer BC under investigation for elder abuse." "Company confirms suspension of engineer Tunde Adigun pending inquiry." Public sympathy shifted swiftly. Donations flooded a new hashtag number, "Help Mama Ijeoma Heal." People offered money, prayers, even songs. An old gospel singer from Enugu posted a video dedicated to her. At the hospital, nurses whispered, "This is the woman from the video, the one who forgave her son." Forgiveness. That word spread faster than scandal. Days passed. Mama's condition improved little by little. Tunde barely left her side. Each morning he read aloud the Proverbs verse she kept in her tin box. Each night he wrote apology letters to everyone he had hurt: his boss, the community elders, and most of all himself. When Miss Adiemi visited again, she found him cleaning the hospital floor beside the nurses. "You don't have to do that," she said. He looked up. "I have to start somewhere. Pride won't wash away guilt, but service might." She smiled. "You're learning faster than most men." Tunde exhaled. "When I was young, Mama used to tell me that pride is a disease without fever. You don't feel it until you've burned everything." "She's a wise woman," Adiemi said. "When she's well, let's talk. I have an idea, something that might turn all this into redemption instead of ruin." 2 nights later, while the rain returned, Tunde sat beside his sleeping mother again. He opened her tin box and found something he hadn't noticed before: a folded certificate of land ownership, small but real. The document listed his name as beneficiary. Beneath it was a note in her handwriting, "For my son, so he may one day build something that belongs to his heart, not his ego." Tunde held it to his chest and cried quietly. He whispered, "I will, Mama. I will build something that matters." The next morning he went to the police station with Amara's USB drive and gave his statement, signing every page without hesitation. "Charge me for neglect if you must," he said to the officer. "But make sure BC answers for what she did." The officer nodded. "You're doing the right thing. Justice begins when guilt stops hiding." That evening, BC's arrest made headlines. Cameras flashed as she was escorted out of her apartment, shouting, "It was just a joke. She wasn't hurt that bad." The crowd outside shouted back, "No more jokes with mothers." Inside the hospital, Mama Ijeoma woke fully for the first time in days. Her eyes met Tunde's. "What's that noise, Justice?" he said softly. "The world finally sees you." She reached for his face. "Then make them see more than my pain, my son. Make them see the lesson." "I will," he promised, kissing her hand. And for the first time in years, the sun rising over Accra felt warm, not cruel, because somewhere between guilt and forgiveness, a heart had begun to heal. The morning sun over Accra rose gentle but uncertain, filtering through the blinds of Street Nicholas Annex Hospital, like hesitant forgiveness. The chaos outside, the reporters, the online fury, the viral hashtags, seemed to hum far away. Inside room 204, Tunde sat by his mother's bed, head bowed, whispering prayers between breaths. For the first time in years, Mama Ijeoma slept peacefully. The doctors said her lungs were fragile, but stabilizing her spirit stronger than any medicine. Her face looked calm, as if her soul had climbed out of a nightmare and found its way back to light. Tunde reached for her hand. "Mama," he murmured, "I can't undo what I let happen. But I swear I will spend the rest of my life trying to make it right." A soft knock came from the door. It was Amara, the neighbor, who had brought truth to light. She stepped in holding a brown envelope. "You'll want to see this," she said. Inside the envelope were printed documents, screenshots of messages between BC and a man named Chief Gambo. In the texts, BC bragged about how she'd staged drama with her mother-in-law to gain followers, promising to tag his company in the video once it went viral. In return, Gambo would sponsor her upcoming clothing brand. Tunde's jaw tightened. She sold her conscience for clout. Amara nodded. "But the world knows now. The police traced the payments. She and Chief Gambo are both under investigation." He sank back into his chair, covering his face. "I thought I was the one chasing success. Turns out we both got lost in the same storm." Amara placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "The difference is you came back." He managed a faint smile. "Because someone showed me where home was." Amara looked at him for a moment longer, then at Mama's resting form. "She'll be proud again. You'll see." Later that day, Miss Adeyemi arrived carrying a stack of papers and a cup of hot tea. "For you," she said. "And for her when she wakes up." Tunde blinked. "You didn't have to, I did," she interrupted softly. "You'll need strength for what's next." "What's next?" She handed him the documents. "We're going to court. The public wants accountability. The company wants closure. And I think your mother deserves truth in daylight." Tunde hesitated. "Court, won't that reopen her wounds?" "Justice doesn't reopen wounds," Adeyemi replied. "It cleans them." He looked through the pages, a formal complaint to Iko High Court detailing charges of elder abuse, online harassment, and criminal humiliation. His signature was required at the bottom. He took the pen, hand trembling. "If this helps Mama, I'll sign with my whole heart." "Good," Adeyemi said, smiling faintly. "And after that, I have something else for you." She unfolded a second paper. It was a proposal titled, "Project Eldercare Corporate Social Responsibility Initiative." "I want you to head this when you return," she said. "Turn this scandal into service. Let's build something that heals others too." Tunde stared at her words, failing. "After everything I've done, you still trust me." "I don't trust your past," she said. "I trust the man sitting beside his mother's bed right now." That evening, as twilight spread over, Accra Mama stirred awake. Her eyelids fluttered open and she smiled faintly. "You're still here, my son." Tunde leaned forward, tears glimmering in his eyes. "Where else would I be? I dreamed I was walking through Okeiramo again," she whispered. "Your father was there standing by the river. He said, 'It's not her time yet.' Then I woke up." Tunde laughed softly through his tears. "Then even heaven wants you to stay a little longer." She touched his cheek. "You look tired, Tunde. Are you eating?" He chuckled. "Always the same question." She smiled. "A mother's love doesn't retire no matter how grown her child thinks he is." They sat in silence for a while, the rhythm of the heart monitor filling the room like a lullaby. Finally, Mama spoke again, her voice steady but quiet. "I heard them say something about court. Is it true?" He nodded. "Yes, but don't worry, it's time people see the truth." She frowned gently. "Will BC be there?" "Yes." "Then promise me something, anything. Don't go there for revenge. Go there for redemption." Tunde lowered his eyes. "I don't want revenge. I just want the world to remember that mothers are not burdens, they are roots." The next morning, the courthouse steps were crowded. Reporters, activists, curious citizens all gathered under the blazing Accra Sunday. Some carried placards number "Justice for Mama Ijeoma," number "Respect Our Mothers," number "End Elder Abuse." Inside, the air buzzed with tension. Cameras clicked, pens scratched, whispers swirled. Mama was wheeled in on a chair, dressed in a simple blue wrapper, her headscarf neat, her posture regal despite her weakness. Every eye turned toward her, the woman whose suffering had shaken a nation. Tunde walked beside her, protective, humbled. His once expensive suit was plain today, his wrist bare where his watch used to be. In his eyes was not arrogance, but resolve. Across the aisle, BC sat in the defendant's seat, her makeup pale, her once stylish hair unkempt. She looked smaller than the screens that had once glorified her. Beside her, her lawyer whispered frantically, but she stared straight ahead, expression blank. The judge entered. This court is now in session. The prosecutor began by playing Amara's CCTV footage on the large screen. Gasps rippled through the courtroom as BC's voice echoed, mocking, laughing, tying rope around an elderly woman's wrists. The contrast between the video and the woman sitting quietly in her wheelchair was unbearable. The prosecutor turned to the judge. "Your Honor, this is not just abuse, it is betrayal of motherhood itself." BC's lawyer objected, claiming it was just for online engagement, but the judge silenced him with a glare. Engagement does not excuse cruelty. Then came the testimony. Amara spoke first, describing what she had seen that day. She wasn't acting, she said firmly. Those bruises were real. Then Miss Adeyemi took the stand, speaking about moral responsibility and the duty of society to protect its elders. Finally, it was Tunde's turn. When he stood, his voice shook. "Your Honor," he began, "I was a coward. I didn't raise my hand against my mother, but I raised a wall between us, and that silence nearly killed her. I take responsibility for that." A murmur moved through the room. Even the judge looked momentarily moved. Then he turned toward BC. "You were my wife," he said quietly. "But you forgot that respect is the foundation of every home. May God forgive you before the law does." BC's lips trembled. "Tunde, I didn't mean." He stopped her gently. "Meaning doesn't matter when hearts are bleeding." Mama reached out from her wheelchair, touching his arm. "Enough, my son. Let truth speak for itself." And the truth did. After hours of deliberation, the judge returned with the verdict. His voice was firm, echoing across the silent courtroom. This court finds BC Adigun guilty of elder abuse, online defamation, and deliberate endangerment. She is hereby sentenced to 12 months in prison and community service assisting at an elder care center. Gasps and murmurs filled the hall. BC's face went white. The judge continued, "Let this case remind us that modernity without morality is a disease and that no success is true if it forgets its mother." Mama closed her eyes, whispering, "God bless the truth." Tunde knelt beside her wheelchair, tears streaming freely now. "Mama, it's over." She placed her hand on his head. "No, my child. It's just beginning the part where you live right." Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed as sunlight spilled over mother and son. The crowd cheered softly, not the roar of scandal, but the applause of redemption. Somewhere in the middle of it all, Amara wiped a tear and smiled. "Looks like the soil finally reclaimed its tree." Tunde turned to her, "And the tree will never forget again." As they wheeled Mama down the courthouse steps, the sky above a cross shimmered with light. It wasn't just the end of a trial. It was the rebirth of a conscience. The courthouse emptied slowly like the tide retreating after a storm. The air outside smelled of heat, dust, and new beginnings. Mama Ijeoma sat quietly in her wheelchair beneath the shade of a neem tree, her hands clasped together, her head bowed in silent prayer. Around her, reporters buzzed like flies, but their cameras for once weren't cruel, they were reverent. Beside her, Tunde knelt, still trembling from the verdict. "Mama," he whispered, "the world finally knows. They know what she did. They know what I didn't do." She lifted her frail hand and cupped his cheek. "Let them know, my son. But don't let pride return through the back door. Justice is not victory, it's mercy wearing armor." Her words sank deep, steadying him more than the judge's gavel ever could. Miss Adeyemi approached with Amara beside her. Both women carried quiet smiles, the kind born from endurance. "She's a lioness," Adeyemi said, softly nodding to Mama. "Even her silence teaches." Mama smiled faintly. "A lioness only roars when her cub forgets the jungle." Amara giggled. "Then I think your cub is learning again." Tunde chuckled through tears, slowly, one mistake at a time. The crowd began to thin, but many people lingered to shake Mama's hand. Some pressed small notes of cash into her palm. Others simply bowed their heads in respect. Hashtags that once condemned her now carried her name like an anthem number. Mother of Mercy number, the Heart of Africa number, Ijeoma Rising. Mama accepted every greeting with humility, answering each thank you with "Pray for your own mother too." When the last journalist left, Adeyemi gestured to a black SUV parked nearby. The hospital sent a van for her, but I have a better idea. Let's take her somewhere peaceful, a place with fresh air. She's earned more than hospital walls. Mama nodded weakly. Where are we going? Tunde smiled. Home, Mama. Not the house in the city, your home. The journey back to Okiaremo felt like rewinding a film that had been paused for too long. The city's steel and glass faded into open fields, and the red earth returned under the tires. For a while, no one spoke. The hum of the engine, the whisper of wind through the windows, everything seemed to carry a quiet kind of healing. As the car passed the familiar roadside stalls, Mama's eyes brightened. There's the mango tree where your father used to wait for me. And that small shop, it's still standing. Tunde followed her gaze. The once faded stalls now gleamed with new paint. Villagers were gathered near the junction, and when they saw the car approach, a ripple of recognition spread. Is that Mama Ijeoma? Someone shouted. Children ran ahead of the car. Women dropped their baskets. Men clapped their hands. By the time they reached her compound, half the village had gathered. Mama is back. The voices cheered. Welcome home. Tunde stepped out overwhelmed. Tears blurred his vision as he opened the car door for his mother. The villagers surrounded them, touching her shoulders, blessing her. Baba Ajayi, the old community head, hobbled forward. And, I told them, the gods don't sleep. You see, even the city couldn't keep her spirit down. Mama laughed softly, the sound fragile but pure. Baba Ajayi, you still talk like a storyteller. He grinned. Then listen to this story today. The whole nation knows Okiaremo because of you. Inside the old house, the scent of clay and palm oil wrapped around them like an embrace. Dust motes danced in the sunlight, pouring through the cracked roof. Tunde ran his hand over the familiar wooden table where he once did homework by lamplight. Everything's smaller than I remember, he murmured. Things don't shrink, my son, Mama replied. Our eyes just grow larger. He helped her to her bed, newly laid with fresh sheets. Then he sat beside her, the floor cool beneath his knees. Mama, I want to rebuild this house. Proper roof, proper walls. I want you to rest like a queen. She smiled. The roof can wait. Rebuild your heart first. He nodded slowly. Then let me start with what I owe. She frowned gently. You owe nothing. I owe everything, he said. And I'll pay with my life's work. He reached into his pocket and took out the land certificate he had found earlier. You saved this for me. I want to use it to build something for others. Something that honors you. A week later, the news broke. Engineer Adigan launches Project Elder Care Initiative to protect and support senior citizens across West Africa. Television hosts called it a movement born from repentance. Companies pledged support. Churches sent volunteers. For the first time in years, Tunde felt pride without poison. Mama watched the first brick being laid for the pilot center near Okiaremo. Her eyes glistened as workers lifted the signboard, Mama's Hands Elder Care Center, founded in honor of Ijeoma Adigan. Villagers clapped, singing Yoruba hymns of thanksgiving. Someone beat a talking drum, and the rhythm carried across the fields. As the ceremony ended, Amara joined Tunde near the site. You did it, she said. He shook his head. We did it. Without your courage, I'd still be hiding behind silence. She smiled. Then maybe the lesson wasn't just for you. Maybe it was for all of us to speak when kindness demands it. They stood there quietly, watching the sun slide toward evening, its golden glow turning the red earth into fire. Later that night, when everyone had gone, Tunde sat outside the old house. The crickets chirped and a soft breeze carried the smell of roasted corn from the nearby market. Mama wheeled herself onto the veranda beside him. Beautiful night, she said. It is. You know, your father used to sit out here after harvest. He'd say, success isn't how much you gather, Ijeoma, it's how many you feed. Tunde smiled. Then I think I finally understand him. She looked at him carefully. You've changed, but promise me something, anything. When I am gone, and don't look so scared, I mean when time calls me, don't let the noise of the world drown the quiet voice of gratitude. He bowed his head. I promise, Mama. She reached into her wrapper pocket and handed him the small tin box one last time. Keep it. Not for the money, it's empty now, but for the memory. When life tempts you to forget again, open it. He opened the lid. Inside, a folded scrap of paper remained. On it, in faded ink, she had written a single line: a mother's tears are the first rain that grows a man's soul. He pressed the paper to his heart, tears spilling freely. I'll never forget again. The following morning, villagers gathered for Sunday service at the small church by the river. The pastor preached about forgiveness, and Mama's story filled the sermon like a parable. Even children whispered her name during prayers. Tunde stood at the back, head bowed, overwhelmed, by how one broken life could become a bridge for so many others. After the service, Mama was surrounded by women offering gifts, bananas, palm oil, even a live chicken. She laughed. I'll have to open a market stall again at this rate. When the laughter faded, she looked toward the sky, whispering, "Thank you, God. You turned my shame into soil for new seeds." That evening, when the sunset bathed Okearemo in gold, Tunde walked down to the riverbank alone. The air was warm and still. He kneeled by the water and said aloud, "Baba Mama was right. Success without goodness is failure in disguise." A gentle voice behind him replied, "Then live it, my son." He turned. Mama was there wrapped in her blue scarf, watching the water shimmer. He helped her sit beside him, and together they watched the river carry the last light of day away. No more ropes, no more silence, just a mother and her son, mended by truth, washed clean by love. The months that followed became the kind of peace Mama Ijoma had only known in dreams. Her name had traveled far beyond Okearemo. Preachers quoted her in sermons, journalists called her the mother who healed a nation. But in her heart, she wanted nothing grand, only to see her son walk a path untainted by shame. Each morning, the sound of hammers echoed from the construction site nearby, where the Mama's Hands Elder Care Center was rising. The half-built walls smelled of wet cement and promise. Workers greeted her respectfully when she arrived in her wheelchair, wrapped in a bright kente shawl. "Good morning, Mama Ijoma," they would shout, and she would raise her hands smiling. "Work well, my children. Build with love." Tunde oversaw every brick himself. He refused to stay in the office. Instead, he carried sacks of cement, drew floor plans on paper flecked with dust, and ate lunch with the laborers under the same mango tree where his mother once tied firewood. Sometimes he caught the workers staring at him, whispering. He didn't mind. Let them whisper. Redemption was louder than gossip. One afternoon, Amara arrived with a camera crew from a local network. "The people want to see what their donations built," she explained. She walked through the compound, filming the gardens, the dormitory for elderly residents, and the kitchen that smelled of fresh akara. When she turned the camera toward Tunde, he blushed awkwardly. "I'm not the story," he said. "She is." Mama laughed from behind the lens. "Then let us both share it," she said. Her voice carried strength, now clear as the church bell on Sunday mornings. "If my pain gave birth to mercy, then I thank God for every tear." The broadcast aired that evening, and thousands watched. The next day, more volunteers arrived, nurses, carpenters, teachers. Even the government sent representatives to pledge funding. Hope, it seemed, was contagious. Yet redemption rarely comes without one last test. A week before the grand opening, a letter arrived from Iko High Court. It was addressed to Tunde. The envelope carried a seal from BC's lawyer. She was appealing her sentence. Tunde felt the old ache stir in his chest. "Why can't she just let it end?" he muttered. Mama, folding laundry nearby, glanced up. "Because forgiveness is a road with two ends. You walked your side, now she must walk hers." "She already hurt you, Mama. She hurt both of us." Mama's hands didn't stop moving. "And still, bitterness will hurt you more if you keep it." He looked at her, frustrated but silent. Deep down, he knew she was right. But some wounds, though healed, left scars that still throbbed when touched. The day of the appeal hearing, Accra's sky was gray, promising rain. Reporters waited outside the courthouse again, but the frenzy was smaller, now gentler. People weren't here for scandal, they were here for closure. Inside, BC stood in her prison uniform, thinner, her arrogance stripped away. She glanced around nervously until her eyes found Tunde and Mama sitting side by side. Their calm unnerved her more than any gavel. The judge asked if she had anything to say. She hesitated, then spoke in a trembling voice. "Your Honor, I was wrong. I wanted fame. I thought the world loved noise, so I made cruelty my microphone. But I've been silent for 6 months now, and in that silence, I heard myself for the first time. I am sorry." Her voice cracked. "To the court, to Nigeria, to my mother-in-law." Gasps rustled through the room. Even the judge's pen paused above his notes. BC turned toward Mama, her eyes wet. "Mama Ijoma, I don't ask you to take back what I did. I only ask that you let me serve the rest of my punishment at your center. Let me help the old people," I once mocked. The hall fell silent. Everyone looked at Mama. She didn't speak right away. Her gaze softened, tracing the frail woman who once strutted in designer heels. Then she nodded. "If you wish to serve, come. But understand, service is not freedom, it's learning." The judge leaned forward. "Are you certain?" Madam Mama smiled gently. "If we close the door on those who wish to change, where will we send our own children when they fail?" After deliberation, the court granted the request. BC's sentence would continue as community service under supervision at Mama's Hands Elder Care Center. When it was over, Tunde exhaled, unsure whether to feel relief or unease. Mama touched his arm. "This is what true justice looks like, my son. It doesn't humiliate, it transforms." Rain started as they drove back to Eremo, soft at first, then heavy, washing the red earth clean. The windshield blurred, but Tunde could still see his mother's reflection in the glass, her eyes closed, lips moving in silent prayer. "Thank you, Lord," she murmured. "You turned every stone they threw at me into the foundation beneath my son's feet." That evening, lightning cracked the horizon, but inside the small house the air was warm. They ate yam pottage together, their laughter mingling with the sound of rain drumming the tin roof. It was the first meal in years that tasted like home. Weeks passed. The day came when BC arrived at the elder care center under police escort. The workers eyed her warily. Tunde avoided her gaze, his emotions tangled between pity and resentment. But Mama greeted her with quiet dignity. "Welcome," she said, handing BC a broom. "Start by sweeping the courtyard. Every sweep is a prayer if done with humility." BC nodded, tears forming, and began to work. Over the next months, the rhythm of the center changed. BC cooked cleaned red stories to the elderly women who called her daughter. She learned to wake before dawn, to measure worth not by likes but by smiles. At first, people doubted her. Then slowly they softened. One morning, Tunde found her kneeling beside a blind old man, feeding him porridge with careful hands. When she looked up and met his eyes, there was no vanity left, only exhaustion and sincerity. "She's learning," Mama said later, watching from the veranda. "Grace takes time." As the one-year mark approached, plans for the official inauguration of the Elder Care Center began. Invitations went out to churches, NGOs, and even the Ministry of Social Welfare. The president's wife sent word she might attend. It was to be a national celebration of compassion reborn. On the eve of the event, Mama asked Tunde to bring her to the chapel built beside the center. The small building smelled of new paint and candle wax. A cross hung above the altar, carved from wood, salvaged from the ruins of her old village house. She took his hand. "Tomorrow, when they clap for you, remember it's not applause you're hearing. It's responsibility knocking." He nodded. "I understand." Then she smiled, that same soft, knowing smile he'd seen since childhood. "You know, I once prayed that you would rise higher than anyone in Okairimo. God answered, but not the way I expected. He lifted you by humbling you first." Tunde knelt beside her chair, resting his head on her lap like a boy again. "Mama, I'm nothing without you." She stroked his hair. "No, my son. You are everything because you finally remembered me." The next day dawned golden. Banners fluttered in the wind, Mama's Hands Elder Care Center. A beacon of compassion. Guests filled the courtyard, villagers, officials, choir groups. Cameras flashed, but this time their light felt warm, not intrusive. When the ribbon was cut, Mama's wheelchair was rolled to the front. She gave a short speech in both Yoruba and English. Her voice trembled but carried through every heart. "We built these walls not from cement alone, but from repentance, courage, and faith. Let this place remind Africa that no mother's tears should fall unseen, and no child's pride should rise without humility. We are each other's roots." Applause thundered. Even the sky seemed to brighten. Afterward, as people mingled, BC approached quietly with a bouquet of lilies. "For you, Mama," she said. "And thank you for letting me begin again." Mama took the flowers, smiling. "Then begin well." She turned to Tunde, who stood watching from a few feet away. "Son, help her plant these by the gate. Let beauty grow where shame once stood." And together beneath the wide African sun, they knelt in the red soil, mother-son, and the woman who once tore them apart, pressing white lilies into the earth that had witnessed their pain. When they finished, Mama whispered, "Now the house of sorrow is closed. The house of grace is open." Tunde looked at her, eyes shining. "Then let's keep its door open forever." That night, as the village slept, the wind carried the scent of lilies through the compound. Mama sat by the window, her scarf fluttering in the breeze, watching the stars. She whispered a final prayer, "May this love outlive me." And somewhere far above Okieremo, it felt as if the heavens themselves nodded in agreement. The first anniversary of Mama's Hands Elder Care Center came with music, sunlight, and laughter, the kind of day when every face looked softer under the golden across sky. The once barren land of Okieremo now bloomed with flowers and hope. Elderly women in colorful wrappers sat beneath the mango trees, clapping to the rhythm of the talking drums, while children danced barefoot on the red dust. For the first time in years, the air carried no trace of shame, only renewal. At the heart of it all sat Mama Ijeoma, regal in her wheelchair, her blue scarf fluttering like a banner of victory. Her eyes sparkled as she watched the building she once dreamed of become a living, breathing sanctuary. On its front wall hung a bronze plaque that read, "Dedicated to every mother whose love was forgotten but never died." Beside her, Tunde greeted guests, moving with the steady humility of a man reborn. His once arrogant posture had softened into grace. Every handshake felt like another chance to make things right. Amara, now the communications director for the center, walked around with her camera capturing moments that would later fill newspapers across Ghana and Nigeria. "Smile, Mama," she called playfully. Mama laughed, showing the gap in her teeth. "I've been smiling since sunrise, my child. If I smile anymore, the sun will retire early." Everyone laughed, and even Tunde joined his laughter, rich and easy, something the world hadn't heard from him in years. Later that afternoon, the guests gathered under a large white canopy for the commemorative ceremony. A local choir began to sing an Igbo hymn, the melody rising into the sky like a prayer. When the song ended, Miss Adeyemi took the stage. "This place," she said, her voice clear and strong, was born from pain, but it grew into purpose. It reminds us that the truest leadership isn't about position or money. It's about courage to admit when we've failed and the grace to start again. Applause filled the air. She gestured toward Tunde and Mama. This son and mother turned tragedy into transformation. And today their story is Africa's reminder that redemption is our continent's most powerful inheritance. Tunde helped his mother roll toward the podium. The crowd quieted instantly. Even the wind seemed to pause. Mama looked out at the faces, young and old, rich and poor, and began to speak in her soft, rhythmic voice. "My children," she said, "when the world laughed at me, I wanted to hide. But God turned my humiliation into a harvest. He used my tears to water seeds I didn't even know I had planted. You see, a mother's love is like rain. It falls on both the grateful and the ungrateful. Yet it never asks for anything back except that her children do better." She looked at Tunde, her eyes misty. "This son of mine, he forgot me once. But look how God has remembered him, because no heart is too far gone when it bends toward home." The crowd stood and clapped. Some people cried openly. Others simply bowed their heads in silent reverence. As the ceremony ended, BC approached the stage quietly. Her head was covered with a simple white scarf, her clothes plain. She had completed her year of community service and chose to stay on as a volunteer. Her hands trembled as she held a microphone. "I don't deserve to stand here," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "but I have to say this before the world forgets." She turned toward Mama. "You gave me a chance when I didn't deserve one. You taught me that punishment isn't what breaks us, shame is, and forgiveness is what rebuilds us." She looked out at the crowd. "If any of you have wronged, your parents don't wait for a courtroom to remind you. Go home today, kneel, say sorry. Don't let pride bury the people who raised you." The crowd murmured with emotion. Mama nodded gently. "Well spoken, my daughter. The soil doesn't reject a seed that repents." BZ's tears spilled freely. "Thank you, Mama." She knelt before the older woman, and Mama reached out, laying her hand on BZ's head. "You are forgiven. Now go and live as proof that grace is stronger than guilt." Tunde stood beside them, silent, eyes glistening. The crowd broke into applause again, not loud this time, but soft and reverent, like the sound of prayer. Evening fell slowly over Oke Irimo. The guests drifted away, leaving lanterns glowing around the courtyard. Mama asked to be wheeled to the garden, where the white lilies they had planted months ago now stood tall, their fragrance mingling with the scent of rain-soaked earth. She gazed at them, smiling. "You see, my son, what we buried in sorrow is now blooming in peace." Tunde knelt beside her, his hand resting on hers. "Mama, sometimes I still wake up afraid that all this isn't real, that I'll open my eyes and find myself back in the city blind again." She chuckled softly. "Then keep doing good until your dream becomes the truth. That's how you stay awake." They sat there quietly, listening to the night. Crickets chirped. Somewhere far away, a drum beat faintly like a heartbeat, reminding them the world was still alive. But peace has a rhythm. It slows, it deepens, and sometimes it whispers farewell before we notice. A few days later, as dawn painted the sky pink, Mama didn't wake at her usual hour. When Tunde entered her room with her morning tea, she was sitting upright in bed, her scarf perfectly tied, her hands folded on her lap. Her face looked peaceful, her lips curved into a faint smile. The cup fell from his hands before he even realized it. "Mama," he whispered. No answer. He touched her cheek, still warm but still. The weight of realization pressed into his chest. For a long time he couldn't cry. Then, like rain breaking a dam, the tears came. The villagers gathered as the news spread. Even the elders wept. But no one wailed too loudly because her death didn't feel like an ending, it felt like a passage. During the funeral, Tunde stood before the same people who had once pitied him. He spoke with steady conviction. My mother didn't die poor. She died rich, rich in love, rich in forgiveness, rich in legacy. I used to think success was about how high I could climb, but she taught me it's about how deeply I can love. If you leave here today and still hold anger against your parents, you have learned nothing from her story. He turned to the small wooden coffin adorned with lilies. Rest, Mama. Your hands built more than a house. They built hearts. The choir sang softly as the coffin was lowered into the earth behind the elder care center. On her grave, Tunde placed her old tin box, the same one that once held his school money and her prayers. Inside it now was the folded note she'd left him. A mother's tears are the first rain that grows a man's soul, he whispered, and you grew mine, Mama. You truly did. Months later, visitors continued to come from far and wide. The lilies by the gate multiplied, spreading their white petals across the soil like an army of gentle witnesses. BC ran the kitchen, now feeding the elders each morning. Amara's documentaries about Mama's story were screened in schools, teaching children about compassion. And Tunde, every evening, still sat beneath the neem tree, reading aloud letters written by families to their mothers sent from all across Africa. Sometimes when the breeze passed through the lilies, it carried a faint sound like laughter or perhaps a sigh. And everyone who worked there swore they could hear Mama's voice in it whispering, remember the soil? Remember who planted you? And so they did. Because in the end, this wasn't just a story about punishment or forgiveness. It was a story about returning home to love, to humility, to truth. The world would remember Mama Ijeoma as the woman who turned pain into purpose. But for Tunde, she would always remain what she had been from the start, his first teacher, his last prayer, and his forever compass. And every year when the lilies bloomed by the gate, he would kneel, place a hand on the earth and say, thank you, Mama. I'm still learning. True wealth isn't measured in houses or status. It's measured in the hearts that still beat because of our kindness. Mama Ijeoma's story reminds us that forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It transforms it into wisdom. A parent's love asks for nothing but respect, and a child's redemption begins the moment pride dies. Call your parents today. Visit them. Say I love you before time writes your silence into regret. Because no matter how far we go, every path that leads back to love is a path worth walking. If this story touched your heart, drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from and one thing you're grateful to your parents for. Subscribe to African Stories, where every tale reminds us that love, not pride, is the true measure of greatness.